Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of When the Heart Leads. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Newberg, founder of Books of Eden Publishing, and the title of this episode is Letting Go. And I start with my notes. The first thing in my notes is, what could I possibly have to say about this that hasn't been said? So excuse me. I just want a quick note. You may have noticed it's been a couple of weeks, and that's because I've been getting over something like a deep kind of physical illness. I've been sick for a couple of weeks, so maybe you've noticed that as well. There's been a lot of turning toward the body, releasing, and we like to say like, oh, well, body, I'll give you whatever you need, but then at a certain point, you're like, okay, let's hurry this up, right? So I was being tested a little bit on how to really give my body what it needs over a long period of time. So I'm coming in now, really on the other side of that, but that's why I've been out for a few weeks in case you've been following. Um, but yeah, letting go. So what could I possibly have to say about this that hasn't been said, right? There's been books written on it. There's ancient traditions in releasing and non-attachment and all these things. So like what is it that's coming up for me right now where I could offer something new, maybe a new idea around this letting go? And the way that I'm approaching it right now is the idea that as we're moving into these higher and higher levels of soul expression, right? And if you've been following along over the course of the past few months, you'll know that that's really what we're moving toward here. Is what is it that is emerging from the soul level, for us to really be leaning into gifting, becoming, right? And we also know that nothing less than giving from the soul level will satisfy us, will fulfill us, right? So, in that process of recognizing that, of opening to that, um, you'll notice that there's a lot of other things that are going to be released, right? And so, as we're talking about coming into the space of letting go, my offering is to start to acknowledge what's actually already gone. What's actually already gone. And you may notice, and you may have noticed if you scan your life or you scan your past, you'll know that in those bigger transitions, when there was really time to let something go, you may have noticed that the energy was already gone before maybe the physical thing, person, situation, right, left. You may have noticed that the energy for it had long since departed. And um sometimes, right, it takes our conscious acknowledgement a little bit of time to really allow for that, because a lot of times these can be big transitions as we're working into full soul expression, right? um it can be a big transition into acknowledging what just isn't working anymore, doesn't belong in your life anymore, right? And I'm going to offer, as we go on, I'm going to offer that this is going to happen at the level of identity, of who I am on this earth, right? So as we tune into that, right, there is some hope here, because right, it can feel like as we're acknowledging the energy that's already departed for this thing, this person, this opportunity, this lifestyle, whatever it is, right? This identity, as we'll talk about, as we're tuning into that, um, it can feel like, I remember the last time I went through something like this, and I remember the exhaustion of it. Like, I just can't start all over again. I'm too exhausted. There's been so many instances. Like, if you read my books, or you followed my work, you'll know that there were times when there was a time when I took everything I owned and got it down to two suitcases, and I just left, and I traveled for 2 years, and that's where my books came from, right? And so that, and that was a massive letting go. That was a massive letting go of physical things that had defined me or that I'd leaned on up until then, right? And so now we're talking not about that kind of deep raising, right? That complete raising of everything to the ground, but a gentler offering of what remains, what still is in the midst of whatever transition this is. And I'm speaking of a transition because it feels as though, if I can speak personally, it feels as though there's some powerful momentum for really claiming what it is that my soul wants to create to become in this lifetime. And um, I've been told as I tune in to higher guides, to higher meditation, I've been told that this is a transpersonal, it's not just a personal experience, but a transpersonal thing that many, many of us are going through right now, where nothing less than soul expression will fulfill us, and nothing else but that, anything other than that will be released, is being released. And so there's a gentleness to it because um as these releases happen, right, as these letting goes, as these powers of letting go, as they emerge, there's something left, there's something true that remains, right? But um I think that as I'm discussing, right, that which is already gone, and as if you're newer to this or you're just tuning in, welcome, by the way. But oftentimes what I'll do is I can speak in these kind of theoretical realms, but then I try to bring everything down as much as possible to a concrete example or a concrete practice. So um, I can say that in my own personal life, right, there is a specific realm where I can see the energy is no longer available. It's just not there, and it's in the realm of my my kind of day job, and we talk a lot about, we're getting into, in the last episode we talked a lot about how are ways to lean into prosperity that are aligned with our soul's purpose, right, and to allow all of that to be supported, right? And I'm never able to say anything um and and then I'm tested on it, right? So I'm really, as I speak, I know that everything I say I'm also living, right? Which is what gives, I feel, is what gives it actual authenticity, because I'm not speaking from theoretical, from theory, from intellectual theory. I'm speaking from my own life. So what I'm speaking of right now is this, we talk a lot about, like, well, get the kind of day job where you can just make a living and it's not that taxing on you, and then in all your other time, you can live authentically, right? But for many of us, if you go all the way back, I did my doctoral research on workplace burnout, and I think this is the key to it, which is, if what we're doing is not authentic to our soul, right? And for those of us who are way showers, who are really creating this new paradigm of living, this new morphogenetic field, nothing less than full alignment with our soul is going to fulfill us, right? So that's really what I'm speaking of. And so if we can't say, like, oh well, this one part of my life doesn't really fit, but that's okay because everything else does. We're being lifted into full impeccable integrity and alignment, right? And so for me right now, that's appearing as kind of like a day job that I've always known was a bit of a stepping stone, but that seems to be releasing much faster than I had anticipated. And so I was in meditation, and if you follow, you know that I meditate every morning, and I receive kind of visions and messages in that time. And I saw the contract, the soul contract of this kind of day job I have, right? And I saw the date, the ending date on the contract of the soul contract, of the metaphysical contract, was very different from the date on the actual physical contract. And I actually, if I tune back in, I could see that the date on that contract, the very next day, it felt like whew, all the energy had just disappeared for that whole experience. It was gone, right? And I continued to physically show up, but the heart wasn't there, the energy wasn't there, something had departed. It was already gone. And I can speak from experience that there are many times that I've been in intimate relationships in the past, and the energy for the relationship was gone before the actual kind of discussion of separation happened. And so it never came as like a surprise because it felt like it was already done. Like in some ways you could say the breakup had already happened. The rest of it was just a formality. And so I want to talk about that because sometimes sometimes the energy for something, the life force for something departs, and it's difficult for us to admit it because it was something we relied on. It was something stable. It was something maybe we didn't feel like we were ready to let go of yet. And so the energetic departing is a preparation for the full departure. And as I'm speaking, right, if you're drawn to this, you may be tuning in to some of those parts of your life where the energy, the life force, the heart for it is already gone, right? And this is kind of an invitation to acknowledge that, right? And I'm getting the image of a tree, right, where some of the branches, or like a shrub or a bush or something, and it's springtime now, so a lot of we've got life force flowing up through the roots into the branches, the leaves, right? And I'm getting the image of a tree or a brush where certain branches perhaps just are no longer being enlivened, right? And we can go through whatever process we need to go through of grief, of acknowledgement, but ultimately to prune that is going to allow the rest of the tree to flourish, right? And we're not talking about the root system here. So, if we're going to continue with this metaphor, what you can really feel into, and I'm getting a rush of energy as I'm saying this. It's like flowing in. So this is a big message. Your root system is not being threatened by this, right? At this point, right? As you're moving into soul purpose, as you're moving into soul fulfillment, you have set that foundation already, right? What I'm getting is that these past couple of years of deep initiation, right? And if you're anything like me, these past couple of years have been very difficult, full of a lot of transition, a lot of trying this, it doesn't work, trying that, it doesn't work, thinking this is it, it's not it, right? And having to go through all those processes of trying, letting go, marshaling your energy, right? These past couple of years, what's been happening is a deep root foundation has been formed for your soul purpose, for the manifestation of your soul fulfillment in this lifetime on earth. That's what's been happening. I'm getting a rush of energy as I'm saying that. So at this point, right, when we start to acknowledge this energy has disappeared, this energy has departed, this is no longer enlivened by heart, by life force, right? We can feel much more secure in the acknowledgement of that because our root systems, our taproot to source, right, our deep foundation for building our soul purpose on earth, that's not being threatened, right? And so we see this deeper, this larger purpose, and it becomes easier to prune those parts of our life off, right? And it looks different. The tree, I love this metaphor. This is just coming in. It's not in my notes at all. I'm not, this is just coming in, but the tree will look different. The shrub will look different. Sometimes it'll look a little skimpy, like we took a lot off, right? But ultimately, that is a very healthy pruning. So what we're talking about now in this idea of letting go is not the full letting go of what lights you up, the purpose. Maybe your whole lifestyle doesn't have to be overhauled, right? But there's this pruning that's happening now at the level of potentially deep. What I'm getting to is that a lot of this is happening, like we're letting go of a lot of powerful ancestral energy. So we talk a lot about, we've been talking about in one episode, I talked about the level of your DNA, right? So the shifting of your actual physical genetic material, right? From kind of a karmic loop into this kind of pure angelic, this pure soul, right? Expression. And what's your DNA? Well, it's a lot of it is what you've inherited from your ancestors. So there's some ancestral work here. And this is all coming, I'm just throwing this all out there as it's coming up, right? That as we're cleaning away, right, kind of the heavier karma that we've inherited, right? What's able to start emerging are the gifts, the powers, the superpowers of our ancestral line. And I want to write an article about this. Possibly, I'm looking into my third book right now, and it might come out. But if you think about the idea of epigenetics, right, and it's possible to pass down trauma, right? But that also means it's possible to pass down superpowers. So we're starting to tap into those enlightened ancestors. I wasn't expecting to say any of this, but here it's coming out. We're tapping into those enlightened ancestors that have gifts for us, right? As we clear away, as we prune away these patterns, these thought patterns, these habits, these things we've inherited, right? And specifically for me, I can talk about like the deeply inherited belief that you just got to do stuff you don't like to get by. You, the way you make money is usually going to be and if you're just tuning in, what I'm saying is like this is what I'm personally like, a deep letting go, right, of an ancestral inheritance that you have to like, you really have to compromise yourself in order to make money, or you really have to compromise yourself in order to get by, or you just got to do something you don't like, and maybe you resent it and maybe you hate it, but you got to do it because that's the only way to get by in life, right? All these things, right? All these beliefs that have come in, and I see like people coming in and out. So I hope you know that's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm releasing, right? And so that's a deep ancestral inheritance. It's not my fault, right? So if you have those things, like, you've inherited it, it's not your fault, right? So you can stop blaming yourself for all these patterns, right? That you just inherited them. But as we begin to prune them away in service to our deep soul foundation, then the gifts, the superpower, the enlightened gifts, right? We can begin to claim those as our birthright, right? And that's happening at the level of our, like at our physical level of the DNA. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been sick these past few weeks, is there's been some massive physical shifts. Like, it's coming deep into the embodiment, the embodied expression, right? Which is the ultimate expression when we can bring it into our lives, into our bodies, right? And we talked about embodiment a number of times on this. So, so I saw that contract, right? And I saw that the soul contract, the date on the soul contract, was very different from the date on the physical contract, right? And that was immediately reinforced by the energy that had departed in this specific kind of area of work that I've been doing. And I'm seeing how, as I'm turning toward the soul foundation that I'm discovering now has been deeply embedded, like deeply created, as I'm turning toward that soul foundation, I'm starting to see myself shift at the level of identity. Like, who am I in this lifetime on this earth? And what is it that I want to orient toward that will be fully aligned with what my soul has come here to do, to become, to create, right? And so I want to offer so the energy for this, and you might know what this is in your life. For me, it's specifically around the idea of what I do, for a living, but for you it could be whatever karmic expression is still kind of running, that's just ready to go, right? Whatever area of your life that is. Um, the energy often departs before the physical manifestation. So that's kind of the idea of letting go here, right? And it's just a pruning. It's just a pruning because the taproot for your soul's purpose is already established. And you can trust that. We're going to start to lean on that. We're going to start to really move into that knowing, right? So, but it can, as we're moving, as we see that our life begins to look different, right? You prune the tree, it looks different, right? Our life, we're pruning it, it's going to look different, right? It's going to be more aligned, it's going to be more authentic, but it's going to look different, right? As we really let these contracts play out, release. We can kind of move into a state of confusion. And I want to acknowledge that, because there's almost like, sometimes what happens is almost like a snow globe. Like, you can feel as these things are shifting, like whew, a lot of stuff kind of comes up, like it gets stirred up, right? And that was happening a lot in my meditation. My this morning, my kind of my higher guidance was saying, like, just we understand it feels a little stirred up right now, and that's okay. So there's this some confusion can arise, right? And so we can move into kind of a liminal space. And the liminal space, what's coming up is that the liminal space isn't a time necessarily right now of not knowing. It's a time of really embracing the truth of who you are, the deep truth of who you are. Right? So this liminal space is not a time of unknowing, because there is a part of you when you tune into your heart, and I've been doing this a lot lately. When you tune into your heart already knows. Your heart already knows who you are, what's right, how to move forward. Like your heart has all those answers, right? That's a place of deep knowing. And now the heart connected to the deep foundation of your soul, right? That's all established. There's no question there. There's no question there. And as I'm speaking, like why this is coming up now is that as those of us who are way showers, those of us who are committed, because it's like that choiceless choice, right? Because our soul won't let us do anything else, right? We're committed to the full alignment, the full expression of our soul in this body, in this lifetime, right? What's happening is that there's a larger receptive field now in the world for what we have to offer. And that's why it's happening now, right? And we've been preparing and we've been preparing and we've been preparing, and now it's happening. um, and so the heart knows, right? The heart knows. So this liminal space is not this like, who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? Right? It's actually a turning toward that moment of turning toward and really embracing and accepting the true identity that you are, right? And so I wrote, it's the I am presence, right? That ignites, and it's going to be igniting in a gesture of connection and of service. How you are naturally designed to be and give in this world. And so as we talk about the confusion, the liminal space, right? It's not a confusion of who am I, right? It's the confusion of accepting that, accepting who I am, accepting the I am that's being revealed as we prune away the things that are not authentic, right? So there's an image I want to bring up. Again, it's about a tree. So this is happening a lot, right? The tree has been a powerful guide for us in this podcast episode, but it's actually something. It's an image I received. I read in a Parker Palmer book. So I've talked about Parker Palmer a few times, and I believe it's in that same book, Let Your Life Speak. It might be Encouraged to Teach. I can't remember now which one of those two, but he talks about the image of a tree. And so you have a tree that bears fruit, right? And in the bearing of the fruit, like the fruit itself, it emanates from the tree. So like an apple tree cannot create like a coconut, right? So first of all, the fruit is absolutely representational of who you are deeply, right? So it's this beautiful fruit that the tree offers. And in the offering, the tree itself is not depleted. The tree is not hurt by that, right? This is just a natural gifting, a natural emanation of what the tree creates. And it can create 100, 200 apples and gift those. And that gifting is just natural. It just is. It's in the cycle of service, of creation, of fruition, right? So the tree itself simply gives what's natural to it, and it doesn't hurt and it doesn't deplete, right? And it is the gift of that tree. So if each of us is a tree, right, we can ask, like, what is my fruit that I'm giving, right? What is this gift that comes naturally to me that I can give without depleting myself, right? That just happens easily, naturally, joyfully. And um, it's given freely and nothing is ever wasted. So even if the fruit isn't harvested, right, it comes, it's gifted, and then if it's not taken, eaten, baked, whatever the fruit is, it's just gifted back to the earth, and then that creates more trees, right? Or it's becomes fertilizer, right? So there's nothing ever wasted in this cycle. There's no energy given that then doesn't give back, right? So we talked in the last episode about what that is like to give in a way that depletes you, right? And that's something to be really, really aware of right now. All right. And I felt that as I was mentioning earlier in the episode, because I've been sick for the past few weeks. So it's been very clear to me um what depletes me and what doesn't, because I haven't had a reserve of energy. So I've had to be very clear about how to give in a way where I'm not depleted, right? Because it would be immediate feedback on whether or not I'm depleted, right? And so a lot of this clarification of this letting go, of this pruning, of this where's the energy already departed, right? That became very, very clarified over the past few weeks as I had less energy to give in a way that depleted me, right? And so this image of the tree, right? It might take a period of possibly of depletion for you to really, really, for me it did, right? Because I can be so kind of overwhelming in the giving sometimes of my energy that I just generate more and generate more. And so it took me to be depleted for a long period of time for me to really come into clarity of what was and was not natural for me to give, right? What was and was not of the soul expression. And anything of the soul expression will not deplete you as you give it, right? It's the natural fruit, the natural fruit of who you are. So, um, what's coming to me here now is that this claiming of identity, this claiming of soul expression, sorry, what I meant to say is this claiming of soul expression is happening at the level of identity, who I am as I walk the earth, right? And all the masks, I'm kind of glancing at my notes a little bit. So all the other masks are dropping away. And what I discovered, right, in this kind of turning toward who I truly am, is that many things that I have worked for um, and spent a lot of time and energy and, you know, resources developing is really not who I am, right? And a lot of that's been useful. And I'll just mention quickly, I did a podcast episode with Violet Rain, and that link is on my website, which I'll give at the end. But we talked a lot about what it means to build yourself into kind of a full mastery in a realm where then you understand that the mastery in that realm is just it doesn't fit, right? And I spent a lot of time. I'm specifically talking about education. I have a PhD in education. I've spent 15 years in the field, and I'm discovering more and more that that's just not a place where I fit. I just don't fit there, right? And I have a lot of credentials, a lot of experience, but as I move in and through and all over, I've been all over as a researcher, as a district level kind of leader, as a teacher, you as a, working for educational nonprofits, like all these things. I've been all over that industry, and there's never been a place that felt like home, right? So even though I've spent so much time in that field, there's never been a place that felt like, oh, this is where I belong, right? And in really acknowledging that, right, I can see that the energy, it's not been a natural generation, right? So the natural generation of fruit, of gifts, right? There's been parts of it that have been authentic, right? So as I think about the most powerful aspect was when I was in grad school and I was able to immerse myself in writing and conversation and research, and I loved all of that. But that could have been done at a level of, or in an industry that wasn't specifically education. It just happened to be education, right? In some ways, I mean, in some ways it happened to be. So it's been a deep acknowledgement to see that at the level of I am, at the level of identity, right? That's not actually where I fit, despite all of the time I've spent in that industry, right? And maybe I needed, for my own soul, I needed to really examine it from every angle to be able to say, okay, I really don't fit here. There's nowhere I really feel like I fit. Right? So then that opens up the question of where do I fit and where do I belong and what is lighting me up and what does come naturally to me. Right? So that's the big question that I want to offer for you, um, as you are kind of scanning your life. And I'm just saying, I'm feeling a lot of energy coming in for this. So these questions can be really powerful, very simple, right? But you can acknowledge what does come naturally to me, right? What am I drawn to? And then where do you already have maybe an unacknowledged and unexpected foundation in your life in those realms? And once you begin to acknowledge that, once you begin to see where the energy is departing or has departed already, right? And if you're like me, maybe you can get an image of a contract, a soul contract, and you can see that the date has already passed, right? And that was a helpful visual for me to see, like, okay, I've already fulfilled that contract. It's done. So now the physical expression of that is just going to kind of come naturally, right? It's just a pruning away. So when you begin to acknowledge where the energy has departed, you can start to see where your deep roots do exist for bringing forth those natural gifts of your soul. And you can begin to allow that to manifest around you, and it will when you let it. This is a very natural process, right? The roots are already there, the foundation is already there. So, those are some questions to leave you with today. I will mention that if these are things that you have questions on, right, and we're walking this path, I have some services. So I'm offering an intuitive writing service, and as well, there's a longer writing service for writing mentorship. If you want to discover yourself through writing, right, a memoir or a story that wants to come forward of who you truly are, right, at the soul level. And as well as always, I offer shamanic healing journeys for these types of questions. So if you're interested, that's something, you can go to my website and just kind of take a look and reach out. I'm available for all those things. My website is booksofeden.com. So if you're interested, you can head over there, see more about what I do, the work that is emanating forward from my soul. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure to connect with you across time and space. Continue to just sink into what are your natural soul gifts, what's already leaving, and what is the foundation that exists right now that you can start to really lean on, really sink into. Okay. This has been the 17th episode of When the Heart Leads. Letting go. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Newberg, and from my heart to yours, till next time.